When you're setting these up in the classroom, it's nice if there was tape from the last time that the booth was there to kind of mark where it went. It just helps you set it up in the right place and set it up so that it's square. The right place, the main thing is you have to set it up far enough from the other booth or from a wall that the door can open, right? And typically we like about this much space on the back so that it's possible to get back there and mess with cables. But you might be setting these booths up in a location that is, for example, in a different part of campus. And in that case, it's okay to set it up right back against the wall if that's not where your outlets are coming from, for example, and you need to conserve space. But it is good to keep in mind kind of where the door is going to be and stuff like that. All right, it's best to start with the door piece I've found, or piece number 1, or piece number 2, which would be this one right here. I've transitioned to liking starting with the door a lot better. And typically the first thing you're going to do is just undo one of these latches. Remember that they have to be completely at 90 degrees for the latch to be completely open. You'll throw one of these corner pieces on, and you'll know they're the right side up because this piece will be up, the one will be in the right direction. When you're handling these door pieces, just remember that it's easy for the door to come undone and start hinging open. And you got to be really careful with that because there's just a tiny piece of aluminum down there. If this door piece comes completely open and you're holding the whole hinge, it probably could bend or break. And so just keep that in mind. So door piece number 1, this next piece on the back wall is number 2. Sometimes they get put into the case in order and it's really easy to find the numbers. If not, you just have to make sure you're actually looking at the numbers and setting them up in order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Don't forget to put a corner piece on each one of the corners. And when you fit these pieces in, sometimes it's good to look on one side and the other because you can kind of see how wide the crack is, and sometimes the carpet binds and doesn't let it get flush. And if it's not completely flush, it's not the end of the world, but if you find that when you try and put the latch down that it's binding, like you have to force it, don't force it. You don't want to do that. You'll probably break something, not good. It should latch fairly easily. So if it's giving you a little bit of resistance, you probably have to change the angle a little bit, push it in a little more snug, and it can essentially take a lot of finagling to get it right to latch nice. If you want building the booth to be easy, you got to make sure the base is nice and square. And so once you get all the pieces on the base set up, it's good to kind of do a quick visual inspection of these joints right here to make sure these lines are actually straight. It would be nice to have like an actual tool, an actual square to like measure the corners and make sure they're square. But typically if you got the tape, this tape got moved so it's not very helpful. But if you have the tape and you see that the corners are lining up with the tape, as long as the booth was set up in a square way last time, then that tape is going to mean something. Remember, the door pieces are tricky. I like to, when I'm grabbing on the top end of the door, grab the frame but also push the actual piece of the door in as well with my palm to make sure it's not going to hinge open. And when I grab on the right side, I try to grab not here where you're only touching the door, but grab on this beam that serves as the hinge and grab the door at the same time. That way it doesn't come swinging open as you're lifting it into place. And an easy way to remember these pieces, which way they go, is that the soft fuzzy side goes on the inside, the hard plasticky side goes on the outside, and then we'll just get this door in place. When you're putting the door piece in, you have to remember, and all of these top pieces, you have to remember to undo these latches on the bottom piece And this door piece, it has more latches than all of the other top pieces. It has 3 on each side. So for it to even fit in the corner, you have to already have it unlatched. Super common mistake to try and shove these pieces in when the latches are still not undone yet, and they just won't go in if you haven't undone the latches. And so this corner piece, I want it to go in. It's not gonna go in until I undo these latches. And then it'll fit nice and perfectly. And just be careful with this door piece while it's kind of hanging out on its own. Probably stand there and support it while someone else grabs piece number 2. The window pieces are a little counterintuitive because the window is on the bottom and the little foamy piece is on the top. And so just keep that in mind. And as we're going along, putting in all of these top pieces, we're just latching it as we go. Now, it seems like the smart way to do the last piece is to just sort of lift it up high enough to clear this. But that doesn't work because this corner and this corner has latches, and they have to be completely at 90 degrees, and so they hit each other. And so you really have to put the corner piece in first and latch it so that these latches are now out of the way. But then the problem is you gotta like lift this all the way up to here to clear it, to slide it down. And if you have enough ceiling space, you can do that. But we don't have enough room in the classroom here. And so what you actually have to do is sort of fit this piece in to the door side first, and then gently bend this enough to slot it in on the other side. So we've got the piece in, we've latched it on the corner side, but then you'll always notice a gap that's too big to latch it on the door side. And so you basically have to get someone on the outside to grab both ends of the corners of this side and pull it in while someone on the inside latches it. Now, before you do the roof, you have to remember to unlatch all of these pieces. And then when we're gonna put the roof on, the easiest way to do it is the opposite of the way that you take it down. You put the 2 big pieces on first, and you kind of have to push up from the middle so that they'll fit together, and then let them back down so that they slide together. Then you start with the small pieces, and you kind of have to push up to fit them in. It's easiest with 3 people. You can do it with 2 people. You can do it with 1 person, it just sucks. But you have to have the pieces with the holes towards the windows because that's where the lighting and ventilation units will go. Remember, there's latches on these ceiling pieces, and so you gotta remember to undo those latches. The word of the day is undo the latches. And I basically had to stand here in the center, have someone hand me the pieces, and I sort of held the middle while they fit the corners on. And I did the 2 biggest pieces first, and I had to like shove it up really high to get them to fit together, and then I let them down. And now with this piece, once again, have to remember those latches because there's all sorts of them everywhere. And the best way to fit this on is to get it close, push up the 2 pieces here, sort of finagle it onto the corner. Do lots of struggling. This is way easier with 2 people, not just 1. And then once the slots are fitting together, you just gently let it down. And we're not latching anything shut yet. You want to have all the ceiling pieces in place before you start closing any of these latches. Now that we have all the ceiling pieces on, I've found the best way to do it is to pick the corner that looks best and start with that corner. So I'll probably start here. And you typically have someone on the outside grab the top, weigh it down so that you close the gap, and then you latch them. And just do it in a circle from the best corner. And once you have all of the perimeter latches done, then you can start thinking about the latches for the ceiling pieces to connect to each other. Latches of the ceiling pieces themselves, sometimes they're close enough that you can kind of crimp using the aluminum pieces and get them fitted in. Other times you'll notice gaps that are a little more stubborn that don't want to close. And this is where it's definitely easiest to have 3 people, because one person latches from the inside while 2 people push from opposite ends on the outside. Booth's all together, all the latches are shut. Last step is to put the table in. Well, probably second to last step. When you're putting it in, just remember these things will scratch the windows up, so just be careful. And they just have pins that fit into little holes. And then it's typically easiest just to have another person help put the other table in. And when you put this bar in that supports it from the bottom, it's easiest to push these screws up and just one at a time start the thread on the little bolts and get them threaded into all 4 holes before you start actually tightening stuff. If you have someone gently hold the tabletops level while you put this bar in, see how it's not tight at all. I've got the same space all across, but I started the thread, and now because the thread is started on each of them, I can sort of start to evenly tighten them and I don't get any cross-threading issues. So inside these big cases where the booth pieces go, you'll have a power strip and a black extension cord. You'll also have a power strip that should have this little USB cable connected to it. I usually keep this power strip coiled up because we don't need the length here, and you'll have the CO2 monitoring unit, and you'll have both rooftop ventilation and lighting units, and that's what these look like right here. This power strip with the CO2 monitoring unit, that's going to go inside the booth. The rest of the stuff is going to go on top of the booth. During an event, typically this will plug in near one of the corners. You're going to want to set the booth up so that one of these corners, and I typically try to do the corner that's not on the side with the door, this is where you're going to want to have a power supply generally, because then you can just plug it in and immediately goes into the booth. No one's going to trip. But one of these cables has to go onto the roof. The extension cable that goes in the big case with the pieces of the booth, it's for the roof. It's not for the inside. The extension cable that's for the inside electronics, that's going to be in the Pelican case. And in the classroom, this plugs into the back. If you're setting it up for an event, you typically want it to plug in right here, so you strategically set up the booth as close as possible to a power supply on this corner. But right now, we're just going to plug this into the wall outlet on the back and sort of just feed this in a way so that it'll stay put. Then you get the power strip plugged into it, and then it's pretty easy to keep the cord from sliding off the roof. And you can use a ladder or a step stool to get the power strip situated between the 2 ceiling units. Ceiling, roof, ventilation, lighting units. They go on with the fan closest to the window, meaning the cords will also be towards the back. And you just have to fit them into the little holes that they have. And we'll do the next one. Same thing, fan towards the front, light towards the back, and fit it in. And there's 3 things that plug in. This power cord right here, it's kind of a jumble of cables, as you can see. But this power cord that has a little adapter, this is for the lights. And unfortunately, the way that the company sent these lights to us. They have these extra dongles to be able to chain the other lighting unit onto it, but they don't reach each other. So one day we'll solve that issue and have a different setup, but for now, only one light plugs in. And typically, you honestly don't need the lights. The windows are pretty big. There's enough light in the room you set the booths up in that you don't need the lights. But sometimes if you're gonna set this booth up in a dark location, they're gonna want the lights. And so honestly, I hardly ever turn the lights on. The USBs plug into the power strip as well. Those are for the ventilation fans. And once those are both in, we can turn our power strip on. We've got our indicator light, we know it's on. And when we need to turn the ventilation on, L is for low, M is for medium, H is for high, and you should be able to feel it pumping air out of the booth. Probably not a good idea to leave these on when there's no people inside. Don't leave them on and burn them out. I don't know that they would burn out. I think I've left them on accidentally for like a week before. But typically, you'll notice that as soon as people get inside the booth and the door is shut, it gets real hot really fast. The little CO2 indicator thing starts beeping. When I set this up for an event or for the classroom, I'll typically, once this isn't on the inside, I'll turn this on, plug it in immediately so that it's charging. But it works off of a battery, and so I can hold the on switch and the CO2 indicator is working. You'll notice that when you have this on inside the booth, doors shut, 2 people in there, it's always going to go off. These the fans aren't powerful enough to keep it from going off. And so a lot of the times what I'll do is just leave the door cracked, because honestly, even if people are talking inside the booth and the door's cracked like an entire foot or 2 feet, it doesn't generally disturb the event that much. People can't hear it because the sound's not escaping that easily, and that'll keep the interpreters more comfortable inside. Today we're unboxing a Pelican case. We've already got the power strip with the USB cord and the CO2 monitoring unit. This came from Big Case, just because it doesn't fit in the Pelican case very easily. Here's what we've got inside the Pelican case. We've got our FM transmitter. I usually put that on the right corner. Then we have our interpreting console. That goes in the middle. Then we've got both of our headphones. Just set those to each side. Headphones mic combo. We've got a fairly long XLR cord. We've got these power cords that I keep zip tied sort of tight to each other because we really don't need this much length. We've got a short XLR cord, and we've got a black extension cord. Let's start with the long XLR cord and the black extension cord. If you film from that side, I'll come in from the other side, I think. This XLR cord is what's going to give the audio feed to the interpreter's ears. And essentially, in the classroom, we've got a splitter coming out of the output of the mixer, the master output. And we use the splitter because we want the audio to go to 2 booths. In an event, this will just go from however you're going to get your audio to the interpreters into the booth. And so we'll just gently lay this to the side of the mixer, and then we plug in our extension cord. And if you come around the other side, I'll show you how you feed it in. The extension cord, I like to keep it as close to the wall as possible and make sure there's virtually 0 slack. The same thing with the XLR cord. it's longer than it needs to be. Honestly, it might be easier to start from the inside of the booth and feed the XLR cord out, but I guess it doesn't really matter. You feed the XLR cord in the same way. Maybe it does matter because this is gonna be kind of annoying. I'm gonna have to unplug this and untangle it. And let's see. Now that it's untangled, I can feed it in. And I guess you could coil it up so that it coils up on the inside of the booth or on the back of the booth. It doesn't matter as long as it's long enough to get to where it needs to go. But the point is, once it's plugged into the splitter that's coming out of the mixer, you just have to line the pins up. You just want to feed it the same way you did the power cord so that there's virtually no slack. There's no loops that people can trip on. Probably would be a good idea to use gaffer's tape to tape this down or something, but that's probably good enough that no one's gonna trip on it. All right, I've grabbed my power cords for both the FM transmitter and the interpreter console. I've got my power strip. The CO2 monitoring unit, I usually just put it on the tabletop or plug it in once the power strip's in. This one we'll use to connect the interpreter console to the FM transmitter. So first order of the day is just to plug our power strip in. And once that's plugged in, then we can plug in our power cords for the interpreter console and for the FM transmitter. And our XLR cord that came from the outside of the booth, it just feeds up through the middle, and we plug it into this one that's marked floor in. Once that's plugged in, we kind of know the length that we need, and we can take the rest of the cord and try and coil it up so that it's not bugging the interpreter's feet and stuff. Give it enough loops to be a nice length and try and keep it close to the wall. The small XLR cord, I typically undo this and just take off like 1-2 loops and then do it up again, because then it becomes really easy to first of all plug the male end into the output of the interpreter console. And there's two outputs, there's channel 2 and channel 1. We're always going to put it into channel 1. Maybe not always, but that's what I always do. There's probably other configurations where you need 2 channels. For the classroom, we don't really need 2 channels. We're just doing the 1 channel out. And since we've got those loops in there, it kind of fits really nicely under the table to go into the FM transmitter, and it's hanging up off the floor, which is just nice because it's out of the way. Last 3 things we're going to take out of the Pelican case are the power adapter for the interpreter console, it says IC2 on it, and for the FM transmitter it says FM Plus on it. It matters which one you plug into which, because if you do it wrong, they won't work. And our antenna for the transmitter. So you just gently thread the antenna into the transmitter. I don't know that we need to extend it, but we always do because it's fun. And then the IC2 power adapter, it doesn't matter which one of these plugs into which adapter. That's not the part that matters. The part that matters is that the power cord coming from the adapter, so this is the IC2 adapter, the power cord coming from this one has to go up into the interpreter console. And the interpreter console doesn't have an on-off switch, so I usually just leave this power cord dangling right here, and that way it's not on while we're not using it. But as soon as you need to go use it, you just plug it in and it lights up like a Christmas tree and it's ready to go. But when we're not using it, just leave it dangling like that. Then we'll plug the adapter in for the FM transmitter. Try and keep everything close to the wall, out of the way. And just as a matter of rule, I keep this one dangling as well when we're not using it. But when you're ready to use it, you can plug it in to the side right here. That cord likes to catch in this crack between the table and the wall. And when you turn this on for the first time, it takes a little while to boot up, and you can start plugging in the headphones to test. One of them has a little red ring and the other has a little black ring. The one with the red ring is for the microphone, it goes into the mic. The one with the black goes into the green headphone jack. And if you want, you could plug in a different microphone, like a tabletop gooseneck microphone if you wanted, into this port right here. One thing to make sure when you're setting this up, center it nicely so both interpreters will have equal access to it, and make sure the volume knobs are zeroed out. That way no one's gonna hurt their ears. And then we can test the microphone on this to make sure the transmitter is working properly. And the microphone is not activated until you press one of these buttons right here. And now if I speak into the microphone, if I see the level jump on the FM transmitter, that means that the signal is getting from my microphone to the FM transmitter. The thing that you need to do if you don't see this level jumping, one, you have to make sure that the audio source is correct. And so right now it says line in, and you can press these arrows. You can adjust the input gain if you want, and typically when people are speaking, you want it to average out around those little arrows, and so it looks fairly good right now. Maybe we could increase the gain, but you can change the audio source with this right here. For now, let's just not mess with it at all. Let's just leave it as line in. You can change the FM channel as well. So if you were ever to use, and we do use them in this classroom, both transmitters at the same time, you have to make sure that they're not set to the same FM channel. So you can change this channel by navigating to it with the arrow and then using the side arrows to change the channel. We're going to keep it on 1. And the other thing to keep in mind with these, if you ever want to test the signal that's getting to the transmitter, you can plug headphones in here and listen to exactly what signal is getting to the transmitter. But if this mic isn't activated, it's not going to get there. Let's see, other important things to keep in mind. You can adjust the gain of the signal that's coming from the floor with this little wheel. I usually have it jacked up all the way and I just don't touch it. But you can adjust that if you want. Interpreters can adjust the bass or treble of the signal getting to them. And when you're interpreting, remember you're not going to hear anything in your headphone until you move the volume knob.